Okay, so now that we've looked at a couple of lecture videos here with Python, now let's take a look at what we can do with some of these variables. And so again, I'm going to make this Python file where I'm going to define a main function. And then in the main function, I'm going to ask the user for a number, and I'll store that in this variable num1. And the way we ask the user for a number is we use this input function. And within the parentheses, we basically put a string, and a string is anything in double quotes that asks the user for a number. So something like enter a number, right? Something like that. And then we can maybe put a colon here and a space, and then we can ask a user for a second number. And I can just copy this. There's no need to Control C will copy, and then Control V will paste. And so we've asked the user for two numbers. Now the way we need to, then we want to run this, on line 7, I'm going to write a comment that it says execute main. And the way we execute the main function is we write main with a set of parentheses like that. And so at this point, I need to save this. So I'm going to do Control S, we'll save. I am going to save it under your desktop. I have a folder already here for these tutorial videos, documents, and I do have a folder for Python tutorials. Oh, I didn't give it the right name, so Control Shift. I want to save it under Arithmetic. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so if I run this right now, if I press play, it runs on Python shell right here. It's waiting for me to enter a number, so I'll put something like 45 and then 8. And that's all it does. Now, what is true is that we can actually perform arithmetic operations with these variables. And so arithmetic operations are basically adding, subtracting, multiplying, and dividing, right? So just basic operations. For example, we can say that we can do a print statement, print, and we can do something like num1, and then the string added, or I should say plus, num2, and then I would put something like equals, and then right here in parentheses, so notice how this is a new set of parentheses, and then I'm going to close the parentheses for my print statement, and in the parentheses I can actually perform a mathematical operation of adding num1 to num2. Now let's run this and see how this works out. So I'll put in a number here, 30, and then I'll put a different number, 24, and it says 30 plus 24 equals 30, 24. Wow, okay, so notice there's a few things we need to note here. First, we need to notice the fact that it actually put 30 and 24 together next to each other rather than adding the two. Now, the reason that happens is because when I make num1 and num2, when I input those values, the computer, Python, automatically stores that as a string. Like it stores it like this. Let me put it here within right before the input statement. It stores the number 30 like this. Put a comment there. So rather than put the number 30, it puts the string 30. That's how input works. And it does the same here for when I entered 24. It put 30 as it inputted 30 as a string, and it inputted 24 as a string. So if I run this, let me save it. Notice how it gives me the same exact answer, but now since I'm not using the input function, it doesn't let me enter any values, and it still doesn't add them. Now there's two ways we can go about this. Let me show you what I would think would be the most appropriate way. Okay, what we're going to do is we're going to use this input function, and we're going to use the input function down here. But before I do that, I want to show you what another function we're going to be using, and this function is called the int function. Now, int is short for integer. But let me just get rid of this for now. Let me put a comment here. Int is short for integer, and an integer is a whole number. And I haven't discussed data types in Python. I have discussed them in Java because in Java you have to explicitly state the data type of the variable. In Python you don't. But an integer is a whole number. And so if you're going to ask the user for a number, you should then make sure that you store it appropriately. Now let me show you what this does here. Let me put a 30, the string 30, inside this int function. And let me do this the same here with a 24, which are the two numbers I entered, right? Inside this int function. And this integer function takes that number 30, or that string, it's a string, and it's going to convert it to the numeric value 30. And this one is going to take that string 24 and convert it to the numeric 24. Now, if I play this, notice how now it adds 30 plus 24, and it rightly gives you 54. And so right here, when I added these two values, now I'm adding two integers or two whole numbers instead of adding two strings, 30 and 24. I could also, instead of putting the int here, use the int function, I could use it here instead and do int num1 plus int num2. Notice that I needed the parentheses. It's very important that you're balanced with your parentheses, otherwise you might get errors. And so I'm going to take whatever num1 is, I'm going to make it an integer. I'm going to take num2, I'm going to make that an integer, which means make it a whole number, and then I'm going to add the 2. And then if I just simply use the input statement like I had here, like I had previously, and I am going to copy this. So I'm going to copy this because I erased my previous integer, and I'm going to paste it here. Now, when those two numbers, num1 and num2, are used here, when they're stored in these variables, when the user enters those values, I can convert them down here to integers. And if I then save this and then run, notice how it's waiting. Okay, I'm going to give it the number 30, and then I'll give it the number 24. And now it successfully adds 24 and 30 to get 54. So that's good. But if you're going to be using num1 and num2, if you want to use their numeric value later in other operations, I would suggest that instead of using the integer function here, you use it up here. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to put here instead int, and I'm going to put the set of parentheses, and I've basically put this input function inside this int function, and I'm going to do the same with num2. Again, notice the parentheses. We need to always be balanced with our parentheses. And now I'm just going to get rid of what I have here. So again, make sure you're balanced with these parentheses. Otherwise, you're going to have issues when you run this. And so we go back to our original implementation. The only difference is that I'm using this integer function now to make the string that is entered by the user to make it an integer, a whole number. Now I'm going to save this and verify that this works just fine. So 24, 30, and works great. Now I'm going to just copy this print statement And I'm going to paste it here, and I'm going to say num1 minus num2 equals num1 minus num2. And so I want to run this again. I'm going to make num1 bigger. And again, notice how this is working great. 30 minus 24 does equal 6. I can also multiply. So I'm going to paste again. I'm going to say num1 times there we go. Times num2 equals num1 times to multiply, we use the asterisk symbol, which is shift and the number 8. And let's run this, and I'll do again 30 and 24. And we get that last statement, 30 times 24 equals 720. That's great. Finally, we'll do a division. And we're going to say num1 divided by num2 equals num1, and to divide we use this slash. And once again I'll do 30 and 24, and we get here 1.25. So all of it works great. Just a quick tutorial video here on doing some arithmetic operations, some basic addition, subtraction, multiplication, and division with Python.